Assessments of change, dynamics, and cause and effects are at the heart of thinking and explanation. To understand is to know what cause provokes what effect, by what means, at what rate. How then is such knowledge to be represented? These are the words of Edward Tufte. In 3 books now, this professor at Yale, a man who teaches courses in statistical evidence and information design, has led us to think more about how quantitative information and then how images as well might be envisioned and displayed. His interest in putting images and thoughts together provide a stimulus to these remarks. Abstract, non-representational pictures to show numbers. This is a relatively recent development, perhaps as recent as the philosophical transactions of the Royal Society. Illustrations in early scientific work were just meant to be that, illustrations. What you're thinking of as data design, a chart, for example, run from an experiment, a piece of evidence that you use in your proposal, is something that is really quite recent. The idea of using images and words together effectively is complex business. Tufte tries to map out that terrain for us and make it safe. Tufte provides these guidelines for the use of visual materials. He encourages us to label axes clearly, but as well to avoid abbreviations, particularly distracting, especially in graphs where the abbreviation is used there and there's no analysis of that abbreviation used in the text itself. He suggests that graphics have to be given good titles and that we spend time with the title of the graphic itself, leading the reader in that 3-part process we've talked about before to introduce the text, provide the graphic itself, and give analysis. More about that in a bit. The idea of the words used in the proposal and the graphics combined together to give a specific message as a persuasive device is important. And Tufte also lets us be aware of those elaborate graphics packages and what they can do, and very often what they do is provide what he calls chart junk, elaborate visual techniques that add very little to the information at hand. He also reminds us that color is only good if you can see color, and what use does color do for those who are blind to color, and asks us to look especially, and this is important if you use programs such as Stat Plus, Jump, SAS, SPSS, or Excel. There are graphics consistent with those programs that are default graphics, but that's very rarely the graphics, and specifically the font that you're going to find when you're typing or keystroking the document itself. So the alignment of the graphics on the visual display of information on the font used in the text as well are important. I think it's important to remember that we need to think narratively. In his most recent book, Tufte reminds us to do this when we have a visual representation of material, but especially of quantitative material, to introduce it within the body of, let's say, a paragraph itself, to provide that clean graphic that is free of chart junk with a good title, and then to analyze what we want people to see in it, that is the words and images acting as one. The goal here is to make reading, seeing, and thinking identical, and it is certainly worth it to spend time looking through the works of Tufte and to heed his advice about the visual display of information.